Hey guys, Casey, Enter the Stars. Welcome to the show. We made it. It's Friday, right? I've been in some deep thought and deep research over the past couple days, and I found some jaw-dropping information that I want to share with you all today. So if you made it to today's show, you're in for a treat as we crack the spamdemic CV code. Now, it appears that these spamdemics are aligned into sun worship and eclipses as they relate to ritual sacrifice. And all of this seems to center around a pivotal date, the year 1957. Now, 1957 was a very weird year. This was the year that the National Guard was called out to Little Rock, Arkansas, to stop 9 black children from enrolling in school. And then President Eisenhower actually countered that by sending out federal troops to provide safe passage for these children so that they could enroll in this school. 1957 also happened to be the year that they first publicized the alien abduction of a Brazilian farmer. This was the first time that they ever really talked about someone being abducted by an alien. And this Brazilian farmer. And you can look through these dates here in Wikipedia for the year 1957 and see everything that went down in this year. We also had the show Leave It to Beaver that debuted. Also, the laser beam was invented in this year. And oddest of all, we had an eclipse, and it was actually the last eclipse of 57 total eclipses in a series. So we had 1957 and an eclipse that ended a 57 eclipse series, which is weird. That happened on April 30th. We're going to talk more about that eclipse. But there was also a very deadly flu pandemic that killed 2 million people worldwide. It was called the Asian flu. We're going to get into more of that as well. Now, the eclipse was strange because it had no northern limit. Here's the eclipse here. And it was what's called a non-central eclipse. Here it is right here. See, it has no northern limit, and it was what's called non-central. And this only happens 2 times every 100 eclipses. So this is a very rare event. But this eclipse is even more rare than you can imagine. Because another strange thing about this eclipse was that it was part of what's called a metonic cycle. Metonic, a metonic cycle. And what that is it is an eclipse that occurs every 19 years on the same date, 4 to 5 times in a row. Let's look at this eclipse and its metonic cycle. And this is where our rabbit trail begins. Once we get to the end of this, you're going to be blown away. So, here's the eclipse, April 30th. And as you can see, as we move down the page here, every 19 years, the eclipse repeats on the same date. Isn't that interesting? And this eclipse cycle ends in the year 2033. So again, this is the metonic cycle of this eclipse that began in 1957 and will end on 2033, recurring on the same date every 19 years. Now, they did a story on one of these eclipses. Let's pull that up. In the cycle. And this was the one that occurred in 2014. They did this story because this cycle within the series, this eclipse within the series, also was non-central with no northern limit. Now, to give you a snapshot into what that means, Basically, what they say is that the shadow goes off the edge of the Earth into space, is the way they describe it. We know that there's something probably much different happening or going on. And this is where we begin to peek around the edges of reality and understand the true nature of the world we live in that they so desperately try to hide from us. But here's the 2014 eclipse that was in the series, this metonic cycle, non-central with one limit. When the center of the moon's umbra, this is their explanation, or anteumbra, just misses the Earth and grazes it on one edge. And so this is what this eclipse looked like in 2014, which is weird because the first one in the series in 1957 did the same thing, or roughly the same thing. It's something about the poles, or the pole. This one going really close to Antarctica, the other one going closer to the North Pole, right? Now, I don't know the nature of what these poles really are. I have my guesses, but this is interesting nonetheless. So here's the story that they did on it. Now we're going to talk more about other ways that the numbers 19 and 57 fit together later in the show, because those are two very interesting numbers. So the eclipse started in China. Let me show you this. It actually ended in the United States. Here's the eclipse here. I'm going to play this. It started in China and ended in the United States. Something else started in China and ended in the United States that year, and it was the deadly flu, the flu 57 that killed 2 million people worldwide. So I'll play this back one more time so you can see this. Starts in China and ends in the United States. So this is this flu of 1957, and I found this reference to it in this book that came out called Bracing for Armageddon. Let's blow this up. And they talk about this 1957 flu. And it says here, as they describe this 1957 flu, that it almost got re-released back into the human population. And this is the title of the show for today. It almost got re-released back into the human population in 2005, 2004, 2005. How could that have happened? Well, it says a U.S. laboratory accidentally included it in an influenza test kit sent to other laboratories throughout the world. Fortunately, after an alert laboratory in Canada recognized a mistake, the kits were immediately recalled and no one appears to have been infected. Now, what is a deadly 1957 variant of the flu? What was it still doing in circulation on any level in the year 2004? That it becomes the question. And was this really accidentally released? So when the mainstream media tells you that conspiracy theories are ridiculous and what may have actually happened or what could happen is ridiculous, show them stories like this, show them videos like this, or show people videos like this who seem to want to write all this off. Here's an article from the New Scientist, and they're talking all about this accidental re-release of this 1957 flu. So check this out. This just blew me away because they tell you what happened, and apparently this is common practice. There are fears the virus could escape the labs, as the mistake was discovered after the V escaped from a kit at a high containment lab in Canada. Such an escape could spread worldwide, as demonstrated in Russia in the 1970s. The flu testing kit were sent to some 3,700 labs between October 2004 and February 2005. Go figure, right during the season, the flu season. And this is a professional body which helps pathology laboratories improve their accuracy by sending them unidentified samples of various germs to identify. This is the testing kit. So this is a little bit different than a test kit for like the CV, for instance. These were test kits that they would send to labs to help improve their accuracy by sending them these unidentified samples so that they could test to see if they could identify them. But my question is, these things are being sent in the mail. Anything could happen. You could have a car accident or a train accident, however these things are being shipped, or the UPS driver gets hit and the box spills open. It's almost like they want this to be released, or they're doing this as some kind of a decoy to say this is how it might have been released, right? Because they can always say that. Whereas there would be no excuse for the release of this if they weren't shipping this stuff out all around the world. You see how this works. So this is an article from back in 2005 describing this almost accidental release of an older flu strain that should have been wiped off of the map or locked in a vault somewhere, just in case you need it for research later. But you don't want to have this just floating around out in the public in packages. So, back to this 1957 eclipse and this 19-year series that it was part of. So again, we have 19 and 57, and these are two very peculiar numbers, and they're very closely related to one another. You can see in this picture here how it's been encoded into the architecture of the TTs, we're going to call them. There are 19 individual forks, we'll call them, or tridents. And each fork has 3 prongs. Well, 19 times 3 is 57. And that's how the numbers 19 and 57 are related to one another. 57 is a multiple of 19. It takes 3 number 19s to make the number 57. Now, we have 19 pitchforks, 19 forks. And if you multiply that times the 4 sides of the actual TT, you get 76. 19 times 4 is 76. And if we think of in terms of years, the year 1957, and you add 19 years to that, it comes out to 1976. So do you see the cycle there? I'm going to type this out just so you guys can see what we're talking about here. So there's your 19 times 3, the 57. 19 prongs. This was 19 years ago. We covered this in a previous live show. And 19, let's pick a color here. Let's go over here. So we got 1957. I think a darker color. Let's go with red. 1957 plus or and 19 years is 1976. Now, that's not an accident. There's some mirror numerology going on within that number, which is unexplainable by any other term, right? And 1976 was 44 years ago. Do you think it's a mistake that there's 244 columns right underneath this facade? There are 244 columns just under this facade, which makes a total of 488 between the two TTs. So you can see now how the numbers 19 and 57 relate to one another. So, what is it that it's so special about these numbers to the elite? Why do they care about these numbers? Well, we're going to look into that because the number 19 has a lot of occult meaning behind it. Here are the 244 spaced columns. I wanted to show you that of the TTs, as you see here. All right, so what's going on with this number 19? Well, the elite have a preoccupation with hexagons. And the number 19 is integral to what is called a non-trivial normal magic hexagon. You can't make this up. This is it right here. It's called a non-trivial magic hexagon. And it's the only one of its kind. Here it is in miraculous mathematics. This is the only magic hexagon. There's essentially only one way to arrange the first integers in a hexagonal pattern so that all straight lines have the same sum, which is 38. Now, I want you to remember these numbers because this is going to go off the rails. The magic hexagon pictured above is, up to symmetries, the only non-trivial one which features the first integers. Larger magic hexagons exist which involve consecutive integers, not starting with 1. So this is a magic hexagon, and this is why these people are so fascinated with the number 19, why it was encoded in the TTs, as we just demonstrated. And if you look at ancient lore surrounding the number 19, pulled from this Wikipedia article, you will see some very fascinating references to this, namely the number of angels guarding hell according to the Quran, quarantine, the number of verse and surah together in the Quran which announces Jesus, son of Mary. That's in Quran 19:19. Also, Stephen King's 8-book epic, The Dark Tower Saga, employs the number 19. In the books The Dark Tower, The Gunslinger, The Dark Tower 5, Wolves of the Kala, The Dark Tower 6, Song of Susanna, The Dark Tower 7, The Dark Tower, and The Wind Through the Keyhole as a mysterious and important number. They refer to the Katet of 19, Directive 19. Many names add up to 19. And 19 seems to permeate every aspect of Roland and his travelers' lives. In addition, the number ends up being a powerful key. And now we know probably why. And last, but definitely not least, regarding the number 19, is that the Jewish calendar is based on the 19-year Metonic cycle. Remember, this is the same cycle in which that weird eclipse occurred in 1957. Are you starting to get what's going on here? Our reality is not what you think. Now, the Chinese calendar, as well as the Babylonian calendar, also follows the 19-year cycle. It's also how we calculate the date for Easter. We use the Metonic 19-year cycle. Now, this 19-year cycle was named after this guy right here. His name was actually Meton. Let me pull him up. Meton of Athens. And they describe the 19-year Metonic cycle. And there was a Greek astronomer, and he talked about the Callipus, as he expanded on the work of Meton, and he proposed that what is now called the Callipic cycle. And the Callipic cycle runs for 76 years, or 4 Metonic cycles. Remember this? 4 Metonic cycles, 4 19s. 19 on this side, 19 on every other side equals the total 76. Is it starting to sink in yet? Now, what I'm going to tell you next, you've never heard before. And probably what I'm telling you now, you've never heard before. But we're going to confirm this, because up to this point, we're just talking numbers. This 19-year cycle may be the key to proving that the sun and the moon are actually much closer to one another than you may imagine and think. What do you mean, Casey? I mean, if that was the case, someone would have discovered that a long time ago. Well, let's take a look. The Metonic cycle not only occurs as a series of eclipses occurring exactly on the same date every 19 years, but it also occurs with the moon. The moon, every 19 years, returns to exactly the same place at the same longitude and against the same constellation in the sky with the same phase. Now, if that doesn't give you chills, I don't know what does. Because how is it that the sun and the moon, that are supposed to be separated by tens of millions of miles, follow the same 19-year cycle? That is fascinating. Now, astronomy calls this a coincidence. They say that because the periods of the moon's orbit around the Earth and the Earth's orbit around the sun are believed to be independent and not to have any physical resonance. That's the excuse that they give. But you can't excuse this and you can't ignore it. Now, this number 19 goes even deeper because Diodorus Siculus reported that Apollo is said to have visited the Hyperboreans once every 19 years. Remember all the work we did on Donald Trump and Apollo. And the world's oldest known calculator, which is called the Antikythera mechanism, performs calculations based on both the Metonic and Callipic calendar cycles. Remember, Metonic is 19 years, Callipic is 76 years. It has separate dials for each. So, if we look at these sick people's occult magic and rituals, every 19 years brings us another blind 11 type event. 19 years after these TTs fell, we have CV-19, do we not? So, if our little theory is correct, there should be corresponding eclipses, right, in this 19-year cycle that overlay the 19-year span from 2001 to 2020, right? And in fact, there is. In fact, there's a very unique eclipse that occurred in 2001 and will occur this year in 2020. That eclipse is the summer solstice eclipse of June 21st, 2001. And it too falls in a 19-year cycle. This is a special eclipse because it occurs on the sun god's date of choice, the summer eclipse, which is the most sun that you're going to get in a year. Think about that for a second. You have the summer eclipse. You have the winter solstice as the sun god's birthday, which is the least amount of sun. And then you have the most amount of sun also being a pivotal date in Apollo's life, the sun god. Now let's take a look at this, and you might want to sit down for this. I believe that what this 19-year eclipse series represents is Trump's Apollo series. Let me show you this. Remember, these occur every 19 years. Here's the series here. We're reading from top to bottom. The very first one in this series, remember, these are 5 eclipses long, 19 years apart. The very first one in this series occurred in 1963. Trump was 17 years old. In fact, he had been 17 years old for 7 days after this eclipse. This was the year that Kennedy left the earth. Look at all the 17s in this series. 107, 117. The summer solstice, Apollo. The sun god. Every 19 years. Happened again in 1982 on the summer solstice. And then in 2001, 82 days before blind 11, the eclipse came back. 1982, 82 days before blind 11. And now, in 2020, and of course we're in the middle of the CV crisis. In just a few short weeks, the next eclipse in this series will be coming. Now, this 2020 eclipse goes right through, you guessed it, China. Here it is right here. Greatest eclipse is very near to India, and all the people in China will see this eclipse on the summer solstice this year. Now, to round things out, remember there's 4 to 5 eclipses in each one of these series. The last one occurs in 2058 on the summer solstice. Remember all the 58 surrounding Trump? The 1958 Western about a man who builds a wall. The 58-story Trump Tower. Trump won the 58th election of the United States. There's 58 rooms at Mar-a-Lago. And now Trump's Apollo painting makes all the sense in the world. So I hope all this makes sense. To me, this is undebatable. It's undeniable. And I hope this video goes viral. Monday, we're going to be talking about the Real ID Act and how it was postponed until next year, October 1st, 2021. But it was postponed for all the wrong reasons. They're saying it was because of the CV. And really, that thing never needs to pass. And we're going to get into some of the dynamics and details of the Real ID Act. And I hope you guys enjoy that show on Monday. Let's see, how old would Trump be in 2058? Obviously, he'll be long dead, but if he was alive, he was born in 46. 26, 36, 46, 56, 110. He'd be 112. So, nothing there. Nothing to see there. So, that's what I wanted to show you guys today. Oh, we can finish the show with This is, I guess Michael Jordan has a new documentary. And it's actually called The Last Dance. And so I decided to look at Michael Jordan's mansion in Jupiter, Florida. And this is crazy. So here's his mansion in Jupiter, Florida. And as you can see, it's a mirrored letter J. It's not a letter J written the right way. It's mirrored. It's backwards. J is the 10th letter of the alphabet. And he decided to release this documentary on the 110th day of the year, April 19th, because it's a leap year. So I thought that was interesting. I wanted to show you guys that. This is in Jupiter, Florida. And the reason why this came up is because I was looking at my news headlines today. And basically, apparently Michael Jordan did not allow any filming inside of this mansion. Why do you think that is? He said it was for privacy reasons. But I have my guesses. Probably a lot of weird Masonic stuff going on in there, I can imagine. I'll watch that and decode it. But I appreciate everyone showing up. Thanks for the new member. Looks like we got a new member during the show. Anti-Satan Pro-Life. Appreciate you becoming a member of the channel. Let's go into the chat here. You might have to watch the show a couple times. There's a lot of numbers. But if you sit and just with a notepad, you can write all this out in one page. This isn't rocket science. It just takes a little bit of thought. There isn't even a lot of mathematics involved. It's just identifying number patterns, that's all. So let's take a look. So share this video if you want the word to get out on this regarding how these eclipses relate to spamdemics and world sacrifice. You know, to these people, it's about cleansing, right? Going through a cleansing. Okay, let's see. Let's let this catch up. Some of you might have had some other revelations while I was presenting this information. I want to see those. So I'm going to read through the chat here. Yes, it's about pagan rituals. No coincidences, says Sean. Absolutely. I suspect in another 19 years, near the summer solstice, there'll be something else that goes down. And if we're still around on YouTube, we will take a look at that. But I have a feeling we're going to be in a much different world 19 years from now. Much different world. Okay. Yeah, I don't think he's a good person either. And I grew up, Heinz 57. We didn't really look at the number 57. But there's a lot of occult behind that. And now that we know that the root of 57 is 19, we can read that into Heinz 57 and the number 57 and all the occult behind that number, right? And maybe I'll dig deeper into the number 57. Got another channel member, Dr. Savage. Thanks for signing up. Now, Dr. Savage was the one who actually told me to look at the 19-year calendar of the Jewish calendar. So I got to give credit to where credit is due. I would have never looked at that. He's got a YouTube channel that has a lot of really good stuff on it as well. So go over there and subscribe to Dr. Savage 84. And he does a lot of this similar work to what we do, but of course he finds different things. So thanks for becoming a channel member, Dr. Savage. Heinz 57 is a racial mixture. That's what they say, Joe Butta. We don't have 19 years, says Joel Miller. Well, I would tend to agree with you. I don't feel like we have 19 years. So, oh, your membership got canceled. Oh, that's probably because you were on the other channel. Remember, we switched channels. So, I just thanks Bo Mitchell for becoming a channel member as well. And everybody else, you guys are amazing. Now, you don't have to become a channel member to get anything special on this channel. This is just for people that go above and beyond and want to support the channel through these times of censorship and all of this. But there's no pressure to do that. But I appreciate you guys. Really do. Okay, so Paul said, I was crushed by a semi-trailer truck on Interstate 57, December 23rd, 1998. I was 17 years old. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, our reality isn't what we think. There's something going on a higher spiritual level to where a lot of it's mathematics. Now, you'll notice that I don't try to use this stuff to predict anything in the future. That's forbidden by the Bible. But hindsight is 20/20, and we can see the patterns clearly. So, what are we looking for? Well, during this crisis, we're going to look for the number 57. Someone told me they just released a new self-defense mechanism called, and it was called a 57, a rare cartridge. And that happened like this year. There's a reason for that. The 57 also represents 5G whiz. And this is when Trump passed laws to fast track that this year. It's not an accident that it happened right now. Cosmic Gypsy says CV19 equals 322, 19 equals 17. Absolutely. Absolutely. Eyes 57 also refers to a mutt dog. All right. Cool. Dr. Savage. Everyone's saying Dr. Savage can be a mod. I agree. Let's make Dr. Savage a mod. Alright, let's mod you up, bud. Add moderator. Right on. Good nomination on that. Okay, so let's go down here in the chat. Good morning, Casey from... Someone said good morning. Sorry, I missed that. Show. Why would they hide that comment? By Jeff Delaroche. See, YouTube... People think that YouTube doesn't like Trump, but they actually do. They like the right-left paradigm. They have to keep that right-left paradigm going. They just censored a comment that someone made about Trump. That's why I have this inner workings of the live show pulled up a lot of the time, so you guys can see what I'm seeing. You guys can see what YouTube's doing to some of these comments. I don't have any restrictions on my chat. So any restrictions that you see come up, I mean, unless you're blocked, of course. If you're blocked, then you won't have access to this chat. But any of these, anything that you see that's blocked in terms of the chat, it's because YouTube's done it. Their algorithm has picked something up in what you're saying to silence it. So by doing that, guess what? We're going to expose them and what they're trying to hide. And someone just did a comment about Trump and they tried to hide that. And I just released it, but crazy, right? My date of birth. Look at this. Someone even tried to hide Paula's comment here about date of birth, June 29th. So what happens is, then what I do is I take a closer look at what YouTube's trying to hide. And a lot of our material comes from what YouTube's trying to censor. And then we magnify that. We put the magnifying glass on it to see what they're trying to hide. Looks like we got another new member. Bo Mitchell, thanks for becoming a member. Appreciate you. Much love. All right. Okay, I'm just reading in the chat. Okay. Your chat is slow showing. Yeah, it's probably going through some kind of algorithm. Isn't that weird? All right. Daughter just celebrated her 17th birthday, 4/7/2020. That's cool. Please check out Jurassic Liar. See, they just tried to hide that one too. Wow. Wow, another channel member. Ego Deaf. Thank you. All right. You guys, I don't want to make the show about me anymore, so I'm gonna end the show. But I appreciate all of you. I love each and every one of you. And have a great weekend. We'll be back on here Monday. Take care and be safe, everybody.